because they would understand all anarchy is the condition where there are no masters present. Now, if you write on a piece of paper and you do a sociological experiment with somebody who's not very aware and hasn't studied language and hasn't studied history and isn't truly awake, write down on a piece of paper, no masters, no rulers. Do this. Actually do this. Don't just listen to me say it. When the show is over, go and take a piece of paper, find a person who's asleep. I'm sure there's, that's an easy thing to do, regardless of where you're at. There's tons of them around. Okay? Write down on a piece of paper, no masters, comma, no rulers. And ask the person, flip that piece of paper over and write the first word that comes to your mind. Word association. First word that pops into your head that comes to mind when you read this phrase can only be one word. And I will almost guarantee you 99.999% of people, there might be one statistical anomaly here or there, but I guarantee you almost 100% of people are going to write down the word freedom. Almost 100%. And you just handed them a piece of paper with the definition of the word anarchy on it. That is the definition of the word anarchy. No masters, no rulers. And they'll tell you that it means freedom. Very quickly, they'll write it down. I will guarantee it. You want to know why I can guarantee it? I've done it many times. And invariably, not one person I've ever done it with has written down any other word except freedom on the back of that paper. 100% of the time I've ever done this experiment with human beings, they have written down the word freedom on the back of that piece of paper. And what they don't understand is they just wrote down the word freedom as being equivalent to the word anarchy. But, here's the but, this is how you know they're under mind control. You give them a piece of paper with the word anarchy written on it, and again, I'll give you a statistical average probably. I would say 99.5% are going to write down the word chaos. And again, I've done this and I have gotten occasionally a different response when you write down anarchy and you say you can only respond with one word. That's the key. No phrases, no sentences. Don't try to write a definition down. It's a word association game. Anarchy, and then give me the word that first pops into your head. And 99.5% are going to write down the word chaos. Guaranteed. Again, do it. I'd like to hear people. How about this? Here's a great social experiment. How about next week we open up the phone lines for everybody who has done this social experiment, and you give me your results. You report your results on the air. And tell me about the people's reactions when you tried to educate them about what the word really means. Because they have been conditioned and brainwashed into thinking that the state of no rulers and no masters, called anarchy, means chaos. Because that's exactly what archons want you to think it means. A master or a ruler wants his subjects to think there would be chaos if he wasn't ruling them anymore. That's why they've put this word obfuscation into the mindset of the people and tried to convince them to believe that's anarchy. Look at that bad behavior. That's anarchy. No, that's called violence. Violence is not anarchy. Violence is when there is this erroneous belief of authority, and therefore you have rulership over somebody, which is the coercion of their free will, which is the definition of violence. So, I propose we start using the term archonists, which has much less ambiguity than the term statist. Because then you have to get into the whole concept of, does the person even understand that the state is violence? That that's the definition of what statism is. And most of them don't understand that. Maybe we can get them to a better understanding of just the claim of rulership over them as a subject and a slave. If we start using the term archons, archon, are you an archonist or an anarchist? There's no in between. Either you believe that we have either you know that we have inherent sovereignty, that we are not the subjects or slaves of any other man, woman, or group of men and women, or you advocate the violence ideology at some degree or another. There is no in between, folks. There's no real gradations of government. Either you're an anarchist or you are an archonist. Either you know that we're already inherently free and sovereign, and you advocate the non-aggression principle of non-violence, or you are an archonist that advocates violence and the erroneous notion of the authority in man and some subset of humanity's right to rule, and the vast bulk of humanity having some sort of a moral obligation to obey their commands. That's archonism, otherwise known as statism. There's really no in between. All it is shades of violence. You could call it that. But you're still advocating violence. And that's for minarchists, constitutionalists, and otherwise. If you advocate government, you advocate violence because they're equivalent. Government is violence. It's the claim of authority and other people being your subject under your jurisdiction. You're their master. You could dictate arbitrary commands called laws, and other people have a moral obligation to obey it. And if you think that, you're wrong. You are wrong. You are advocating wrongness, wrongdoing. That's why you're incorrect. See, when you're incorrect, it leads to violence. It leads to wrongdoing. That's why it's important to understand the difference between right and wrong, and the difference between truth and falsehood. Because when we believe in falsehoods like authority, invariably wrong is going to be done because we've accepted that into our worldview. That's why we have to be right or correct. We have to know the truth. Not believe in anything, know the truth. Again, for people who happen to come at this even from a religious perspective, and I gave a quote from Jesus about last week from the New Testament, the book of Matthew, how he didn't come to bring peace. He came to stir things up here because this world needs stirring up and to turn people against each other, actually. Those who were for the truth and those who were for the violence ideology. And again, that doesn't mean that I accept Jesus as a historical figure. I understand astrotheology. You know, people write and say, oh, you do understand, Jesus was a fiction. It doesn't matter, folks. I get the philosophy of the words. That's what's important. You want to split hairs about whether somebody existed or not, and that's what you want to make your whole, energy spent toward. Go ahead. I think that's useless. If there's wisdom in something, then I'm going to follow it. I'm going to put my energy behind that. I follow where the truth leads. That's the only thing I follow. I'm not a follower, except of the truth. I don't follow anything that goes on in this world. I follow the truth, which exists inherently and independently of anything that's going on in this world. The truth is simply that which is. It doesn't change. Things that take place in this world, this is the place of all change. But that doesn't mean we can't understand truth and put it into practice in our lives. It means it's not inherent to physical circumstances or conditions here. It exists completely independently. It exists inherently in and of itself, regardless of what happens to be taking place. So that's the force I follow, the force of truth, which leads to the expansion of consciousness, which is love. That's why truth comes first in the equation. Truth, love, freedom. The true great work. The threefold great work. The 3-in-1. Truth has to come first because your actions have to be based on correctness, rightness. You have to understand what natural law is and get it right, and then base your actions on that. Then you're acting in harmony with truth. Then that is the expression of love. To actually do that work is the expression of love, to put it into action. That's doing the will, capital W. And then the expression or the result will be freedom, true freedom, capital F. It's a progression. You can't take it out of order. Just like you can't take the trivium out of order, you can't take the great work steps out of order. Truth, love, freedom. Love doesn't come first. Truth comes first. The acceptance of truth is the expression of love. And then the manifestation is freedom. So going back to the concept that either you're an anarchist or a archonist, either you accept the non-aggression principle and sovereignty, or you believe in master-slave relationships and violence to keep it that way. There is no in-between. Get out of the head cage, folks, of thinking that there are gradations when it comes to this. There's not. It's all one way. The truth is all one way. It's extremity. People will say, Mark, you're an extremist. Yes, I'm an extremist because the truth is extreme. You need to get out of all of the mind control. If you're still believing any amount of government, you're under mind control. You're still in the head cage to a degree. You may be in less of it if you believe in minarchy or, constitutional republic than people who advocate, socialism or communism or fascism or other forms of oppressive government regimes. But you're still in the head cage. You're still under mind control. Go all the way, folks. This is why I keep repeating the phrase of wisdom given by the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. And again, whether you believe this is a physical, historical being or not, that's not relevant here. Again, I get what astrotheology is. I talked about it enough on my show. I think I understand it pretty extensively, actually. We're not splitting hairs. We're talking about the wisdom, the idea here, the philosophy. He said there's only two mistakes you can make on the path to truth, not starting and not going all the way. For those who are already on the path, don't make the mistake of stopping and setting up your tent halfway up the mountain. Go all the way to the peak, all the way to the summit. You'll get a better view from up there. Trust me. Don't trust me, just do it, actually. Just go all the way. You'll see the truth as it really is, the world as it really is from that peak, that summit. So again, all of these statists, these archonists, these ones who want to advocate the continuation of master-slave relationships, basically they are advocating slavery. If you advocate for the continuance of government, you are an advocate of human slavery. This is what people don't understand. And they want to say that's an extreme point of view. It is absolutely an extreme point of view. It's a point of view from having gone all the way in consciousness. Not looking at it from a distorted lens of mind control. Go all the way to get out of the mind control and you will understand all government is inherently illegitimate because it is based in violence. Is there a right to conduct violence? No, there is not. So all forms of government are inherently illegitimate when it comes to moral law. The right to rule does not exist in nature. The moral obligation to obey a ruler and their arbitrary dictates does not exist in nature. No one has that moral obligation. You have only a moral obligation to follow the moral law, to follow conscience, common sense of what is right because it does not cause harm to another, and what is wrong because it does cause harm to another. That's what you have a moral obligation